Today I want to talk about overcoming the fear of returning to work. This is really common, especially if you have had an extended period of time off. And by that, I mean really anything over about 4 to 6 weeks. You're going to start having some lack of confidence creeping in to your thoughts about how you're going to manage going back to work. The longer that goes on, the more difficult and the more of an obstacle it can feel to starting back. There's some statistics out there for the UK that show the longer you're off sick, the harder it is to return to work. Other health problems can creep in, but also the lack of confidence is huge, and the lack of the unknown, uncertainty about how you will cope, how you will manage symptoms if you've got continuing symptoms, what people will think of you, or what people will ask. So I just want to share a client story of somebody I've been working with recently who's been planning returning to work after about 18 months off sick. So they were really frightened of returning to work. In their head, it had built up into a huge, big deal. Their work, they've been doing this work for a lot of years, so something that was very familiar to them. But because they hadn't really been there'd been a change in the physical office environment as well. They weren't sure what people knew, how people were going to react when they came back. They'd really become very, very anxious about it. And in itself, that was then becoming a potential obstacle to returning to work, because they were worried that they might become upset when they returned to work, that they might get things wrong and get into trouble. And you can see how it can spiral and get out of control in your head and make you spin in circles. So just really want to reassure that with a well thought out return to work plan, which doesn't have to be complicated or long, but sometimes some of these difficulties can be overcome because it's the fear of the unknown that's the main obstacle, rather than any reality about not being able to do the tasks required. With anyone who's been off work for a period of time, there needs to be some reorientation and reintegration time, and that might be spending some time doing refresher training, re-inducting, having conversations with people, and doing tasks that are not what I would class as like safety critical or financially critical. Maybe you'll know what's important for your business, and that space, and it might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, it might need to be a little bit longer, can just give time to know that you're not going to be put under pressure to be ready to do everything again from the first day that you show up. I think I've touched on this in another one, and I'm sure it'll come to it again, is 100%. You're never going to be 100% on the first day back in work. And if anybody expects you to, it's because they have not experienced it themselves. But sometimes it's a pressure and an expectation that we put on ourselves, which is unrealistic. So it's not going to be 100% from day one. So if we can remove the pressure of expecting everything to be done perfectly in full on a first day back at work, that's one obstacle reduced. Then the next thing to do is consider the things that you are most worried about and write them down as specific individual things, because then we can create strategies around those that are your best guess as to how that might happen and how you might want to handle it and approach it. So then at least you've got a plan. And that plan it's as close as you can get it before you actually step into that. I'm going to say step back through the door, although sometimes there might not be a physical door. Step back into work. And then you can try those strategies and you can see what actually transpires. And then you can also adjust and adapt. Now, that in itself might feel quite scary. You might think, I don't know how to adjust. I don't know how to adapt anymore. And I get that. But we don't know how things are going to work out until we try and we step over that threshold. And knowing that lots and lots of other people have done this before you and lots of other people will do it after you, and that you need to take a step forward in order to learn and progress, and knowing that you have a backup plan if that doesn't work, you try something else. And this is where mentoring and support can come in, because you can then go and reflect on that with somebody else and see how that goes. Now, this might be your manager, that you create an initial return to work plan. It's actually always really helpful to say that it's a draft because it's your best guess and you don't know how things are going to work out. So if you treat it as a draft, treat it as a live document, that means that you can say, well, that was my plan, but that didn't quite work out that way, so I'm going to try this instead. Now, often what happens is that your plan works, it goes better than you expected. Some of the problems you foresee don't even come up. And really quite quickly, you realize that you're okay. And you regain your confidence and you realize that you have the support of the people around you most of the time, and that you can take a little bit of time to breathe, to plan, and to then make your next move. And you don't necessarily have to get it all done very quickly. So just a word on that. My intention here is really to help people who are self-employed and small business owners and leaders in small businesses who don't have access to occupational health. Now, you, in theory, have more flexibility and choice about how you structure a phased return to work. And you may not have a limitation on time other than that which is in your head and in your operations, your business operations, about how quickly you want or need to be involved again in the day-to-day business. If you're employed, you may well have an occupational health department. You will probably have some HR policies that have to be adhered to. There will probably be a policy around sickness absence management, and that may well include some guidelines around how long a phased return to work can last. Now, this can pose some difficulties, but really only in a few cases where somebody's been off a long time with something quite complicated. So don't be too alarmed if you find out that you've got a restricted length of time on a return to work plan, but do make sure that you seek help and support through your employer. And for those of you who are not employed, then this is one of the services that I also offer in terms of helping you draft up your return to work plans and then monitoring your progress as you continue. So I hope that's been helpful today, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.